Welcome live into Homefield Advantage, sponsored by Jake Major with the Bullock Agency of Wyoming and Bear Lake Memorial Hospital. Anthony Colasuono alongside Aaron Poling and Elan Olliff. And a little backstory on this show, we're going to document our main sports we cover here today, but also there is so much information that we decided just to all combined together on this show and give a whole rundown of Evanston, Bridger Valley, and Rich sports.
Yeah, so we kind of figured that Thursdays were usually the days right before either we start that night, our broadcast for the weekend, or we start them on Friday, as is the case for myself this week. And we kind of figured that I think we could use today's show to kind of preview those broadcasts and, talk about some of the things that we might not have got to talk about, when we only had 30 minutes tallied to each team. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to really preview the broadcasts that we have coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, I think Thursday is the day to do this because, it's game day tonight for Evanston as they start their slate. I know everybody usually starts their slate on Thursdays, and it's also going to be the same way when we get into soccer, when we get into baseball, when we get into all these other things that we cover. So, yeah, this is an exciting deal. Monday's Home Field Advantage. We get to focus on the sports we don't really get to cover that often. Have a full show dedicated to wrestling, swimming, cross country, those type of things. And then, of course, we have the student section, which we've got some really cool ideas for that show coming up soon. And then today, it's the Home Field Advantage preview where we preview the broadcast. And I think we need to kind of start out with the Bridger Valley. They are on fire right now. Yeah,
we'll start out with the Mountain View Buffaloes. And this past week, they played Lander on Thursday night of last week. The girls lost a close one, 49-46, but it was just one of those games where, things went their way, and just towards the end, things didn't go their way. Just some turnovers ended up being costly. But the boys won a thriller in overtime, 53-51. That game was amazing. And then on Saturday, the boys won over Rollins, and the girls did as well. The girls won 61-28 and outscoring Rollins in the first quarter 19-2 overall. And the boys won 46-43 and came back. They didn't have the lead the rest of the game until the late stages of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I think having games like this late in the season is going to be so beneficial to once you get into the tournament, just because if you roll through your opponents and you're beating everybody by 20, I've seen it firsthand. The moment that you face a little adversity, that team's not used to facing adversity, where I like to use the phrase where you get hit in the mouth by a team that comes out and maybe drops 10 on you in the first 2 minutes of the quarter. You come out and suddenly now you're facing adversity. It makes you that much better of a team.
And you're going to make no mistake about it. You're going to face adversity in Thermopolis in the regional tournament. You're going to face it at the Ford Wyoming Center or Casper Community College at the state tournament in a few weeks' time. So it's one of those things where you don't want to go through it, but at the same time, you're a stronger team when you do go through it.
Absolutely. And looking back at the close games, especially the boys have had on their side, these are 2 3-point wins at the buzzer. And right now the Mountain View Buffaloes just running on all cylinders right now. And it's a true element of team basketball. Looking stat-wise, Will Anderson leads the team in scoring 8.8 points per game. Cole Henry's up there at 8.7. And then the next is Dash Madsen at 6.6, and then drops off just a little bit to Casey Walker at 5.2 points per game. But it's a true emphasis of team basketball. And talking to Dustin Reeves and saying, is there anyone recently who has stood out to you on the court, just doing the little extra things? And he's like, honestly, everyone has. It's a team effort, and it kind of reminds me of the Atlanta Hawks back in the day with Paul Millsap, Kyle Cover, and how that team was team basketball. There wasn't a specific star that you saw on the court, but it was just overall a huge team effort, and they played really good, and every single year had a top 3 seed out of the East.
In the regular season, I feel like it's an advantage to not have that go-to person to be able to trust everyone. But in the playoffs, do you feel like when the moment's bigger, do you feel like it actually would help these teams to develop that go-to person in that big shining moment? or do you think it's still an advantage to kind of be able to kind of be a bit of a wild card?
And that's the thing about it. Playoffs is a whole entire different story, as we all know, just, watching sports our whole entire lives. And I believe, it can be a different scenario and a different story that you may have to have that good go-to person in the playoffs. But in my mind, it depends on the team, how they are built. If someone at the end of the season starts averaging 15 points per game, okay, that's your go-to person when you hit in the playoffs. But when we are 2 weeks away from regionals and you're still seeing guys stacking on top of each other scoring-wise, and one guy might average 15 the next game, and then the next game, the same guy might average 2 points in a game, it shows that someone else is stepping up and taking that role, and I think that's what makes this Buffalo's team special.
Well, when you get to the playoffs, your best players have to be your best players, and they also have to play their best at what they do best. It doesn't look like on this Mountain View team that you have a 15-a-night score. It's something I'm seeing very similarly over in Rich County, where if you try to, put that square peg in the round hole and make someone a 15-point-a-night scorer, they're not that, where if they're just a really solid player on the floor that defends very well, and that's their strength. They got to defend very well in the playoffs. If they're able to facilitate, maybe they only score 8 points, but they're getting all their teammates points. Your best player has to do what they do best.
Absolutely, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Buffaloes do this week up in Powell and Lovell. Powell, number one team in the 3A polls right now, undefeated. 16-0 on the regular season. They'll face them on Saturday.
Worthy to note, they've played some 4A competition as well. I mean, this is a team that I think is going to be able to compete at any level. Powell has just been super impressive.
Yeah. You look at their roster stat-wise, and it is just amazing to see. Overall, so far this season, you have guys averaging double digits. I think talking to Barry Hill, the coach of the Lyman Eagles, they have 3 guys averaging double digits, and they're all over 6 feet tall. Like, they have length on the floor to match that scoring, and it's going to be fun games to watch. And of course, also can't forget about Lovell either. They're a really good team as well, and has had some dog fights with Powell on the court so far this year. And switching over to the girls' side for the Lady Buffaloes, definitely a great overall team, and of course the big 3 of Miley, Mike Lai, Addison Hickey, and McKinley Covelo.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of underrating happening with that team right now. I think that Mountain View is squarely in the middle of this state championship picture, not just the Western championship picture. I mean, of course, Pinedale is also part of it as well. I mean, it's kind of interesting because Pinedale beat Lyman, Lyman beat Mountain View beat Pinedale, so you kind of got this kind of circular thing going on. So the second time through the quadrant is gonna decide it, really.
I mean, Mountain View still has some really young players on their team, and I think one of the last things that you learn as an athlete is consistency. Consistency is so hard. Everyone thinks that just because you walk out on a basketball floor, if you average 15 a game, you're going to be able to put up 15, but it's so hard to stay consistent, and I think the youth of this Mountain View team has got them a couple of times this year, but make no mistakes about it. This is a very talented Mountain View team that when they play their best, they're hard to beat. But sometimes they kind of, I don't want to say they take things for granted a little bit, but I mean, just with youth, sometimes you're gonna have some moments where that youth will show through.
And interestingly enough, I mean, of course, we're in sports media. We love the whole great comeback, underdog pulls off the upset type thing. But I would argue that what is more difficult to execute sometimes is winning when you are expected to. Winning
Absolutely.
when you are the favorite, because everybody expects that. And it's kind of a thankless job when you think about it because, they won. Good. We expected them to. When you're on the other side of an upset, you get the negative of being on the other side of the upset and, of course, the criticism. But the other team usually gets lauded because nobody expects it. Expectations, I think, ups that level, especially for Mountain View.
Yeah, you're getting everyone's best shot.
Yeah.
And I like how you mentioned the upsets. They lost to Lander Valley 49-46. Huge upset victory for the Lady Tigers last week. And yeah, that put the target was big on the back of the Lady Buffaloes. Now it's even bigger because some teams are going to be like, all right, you lost to Lander Valley? We're going to try to make that target bigger overall. And I also like how you guys mentioned the youth as well, as most of this team are juniors. they're going to be returning a lot of the squad next year as seniors. And yes, they're losing some key players this year, but some of these juniors are, maybe this is their first year truly on varsity and trying to get out of that JV type of play style.
Yeah, it is a transition. The biggest difference between going from JV to varsity is the speed of the game. And that seems to be the thing that takes the longest to transition to, because your mind has to work a little bit quicker. Not too much quicker, but it's just quick enough that you see these younger kids kind of get speed jammed where their mind is moving faster than their body, you know?
So the difference for me between JV and varsity is on JV, you see the player and you see exactly who that player is cutting. On varsity, it's flashes. If you're the away team and you see a color flash in front of you into an open space, you have to get the ball there then, or else it might be a little bit too late to get the ball there. So you don't necessarily get a chance to see like, oh, that's, Hickey going down the lane. You see that flash of purple and you got to get the ball there.
Yeah, I agreed with that 100%.
Definitely agree here. We'll take a break here on Home Field Advantage. We'll have more after the break.
When you have an emergency, choose Bear Lake Memorial Hospital. Open 24/7, the professional emergency room staff is trained for trauma, medical, cardiac, pediatric, orthopedic, and obstetric emergencies. Bear Lake Memorial is a critical access level 3 trauma center, offering immediate access to radiology, lab services, surgery, and internal medicine consults. The ER teams are well-trained professionals who are ready to act. When you have an emergency, Bear Lake Memorial Hospital, the most caring hospital on earth.
Out here, we've always worked remote. Out here, stress usually refers to the pull on a rope. Where a stroll in the city is also a stroll in the great outdoors. Where work is a way of life, and life is good. Out here, the backyards are big, and the deals, they're even bigger. This is southwestern Wyoming, and it's where you can get the biggest deals on a vehicle you want with plenty of hometown hospitality. Heritage Auto, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
Whether it's for your home, your ranch, your equipment, or your business, when you need propane, count on the best. T7 Propane in Woodruff. The safe and professional team at T7 Propane offers quality product and the most responsive propane service in the area, so you can enjoy the affordability, reliability, and efficiency of propane. For heating, cooking, grilling, motor fuel, and more, count on the team at T7 for your personal or business propane needs. 435-793-4208.
At Reese Auto Service in Lyman, you will find highly skilled mechanics who will get the job done right the first time. They work on anything from light line jobs of tire alignments, suspension.
Welcome back to Field Advantage. I want to send a huge thank you to our sponsors, Bear Lake Memorial Hospital, the most caring hospital on earth. We also want to thank Les Schwab, Plains Tires, for being a part of the show today as well. We would also want to thank T7 Propane for all that they do, sponsoring both our shows and being a presenting sponsor for the games. And they also cover the standout students. So T7 Propane has definitely been a huge part of our broadcast this year. We want to say thank you for that. As we're going to turn it over to Rich County, last week was a interesting week for sure, as we had a matchup between, it was the number 3 seed and number 4 seed, number 1 seed on the boys' side. On the girls' side, it was a matchup between the number 3 and the number 4 seeds, as Rich was the lower seed heading into both of those games against Tabiona. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Friday night, the Rebels went in, took care of Altamont. And I think that's something that's not easy to do when you're welcoming a team into your building that hasn't had a great year on either side the way the Altamont Longhorns have, with that big cloud of the Tabiona Tigers looming over you the next day.
Man, great wins for Rich, and that Altamont game was just that game to get focused and get ready for Saturday, which then was a good and great day for the Rebels as well.
Yeah, so they did a really good job on Friday of taking care of business in the first 3 quarters and allowing their starters to get out of the game, because the Tabiona games, they needed their starters the entire way, as the Rebels trailed. We'll start with the girls' side. They trailed in the 4th quarter. They actually trailed at halftime by 7. Were able to erase that deficit at half to lead 32-29 heading into the 4th quarter as they take care of business. Paige Smith hits the game-winning elbow jumper with just over a minute and a half left to play.
And we kind of touched on it a little bit, learning how we've touched on it a little bit throughout the season, dating back to the Rebel Report, but learning how to win. I mean, and to get this type of win over Tabiona, that's huge because Tabiona, I think it was only 2 years ago, Tabiona ended Rich's season in the semifinals. So to come back and get an exciting win, you're in the driver's seat of the division right now if you're Rich. I mean, you haven't lost a game to a single Utah team. It'll be very interesting to see what the latest RPI says after this next week, depending on the results of the upcoming games. But you really have to like where you are if you're Coach Lundgren right now.
Yeah, the girls, they have clinched a share of the region title. They have one. If they win one more game, it'll be theirs outright, as they will take on Manila and Wendover trying to accomplish that task. The boys, though, turn it over to the boys game against Tabiona as they finished the game on a 21-2 run.
Whoa.
As they take first place in the region, as they're going to have to win both to be able to win the region outright. If they win one, they'll be able to share they'll share the title with Tabiona due to both having two region losses. That's if the Rebels lose one of these games coming up. But, I mean, just the grit and the toughness. And there were definitely times during that game in the fourth quarter where it seems like it was getting away from the Rebels, and they just kept coming back, kept clawing, kept fighting. Ridge Lundgren hits a huge pull-up jumper to tie the game. Then Jaden Desch, with just over a minute and a half left to play, hits the go-ahead three, and the Rebels don't look back from there.
You said it was a 21-2 run?
Yes.
Knowing how much of a defensive mind Lex Corney is, he had to have been thrilled to end the game that way.
Yeah, and it was just one of those things where Tabiona started letting the air out of the ball a little bit, and then they got real three happy. They went 0 for 10 to end the game. So a little bit of luck was on the Rebel side, but to come back from down 10 plus, you have to have luck. There's just an element of basketball where if you don't have that luck on your side trying to come back in the fourth quarter, you won't be able to come back. But they did a great job of knocking down shots in the end. I don't think they shot the ball as well as they wanted to in the first half, but in the second half, they caught fire, and they were lights out in the fourth quarter.
Man, that 21-2 run, you look at the defense, well, so you got to look at the offensive side and how they just caught fire and got in the minds of Tabiona. You said they were over 10 from land in that last quarter, correct? Or down the stretch.
Yep.
That's just huge because then you win the mental battle as well. And yes, it could be luck as well, but when you're on the other side of a bad run, you honestly just start chucking up shots a little bit to make sure they're able to go in, and hopefully they go in. But nonetheless, huge wins for the Rebels this week, and fingers crossed they can clinch that full share of the divisional title.
I mean, it's kind of been a very silently dominant season for Rich basketball this year.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember last year we were talking about the volleyball team, and it was very apparent how dominant they were. I mean, it's kind of gone under the radar just how good both of these teams are this year.
Yeah, between the two programs, they've only had 3 losses since the change of the calendar year, and one of those for the girls comes against a North Summit team that's going to be right in the mix of things at the end for 2A, and then of course the boys they lost to Tabiona, and Tabiona is a very good team that they're able to get that win back this last time out. And let's go over the RPI real quick because both teams are sitting in the 3 spot right now, where I think the girls, they're kind of locked into that 3 to 4 hole depending on how this weekend goes, just because the RPI is ahead of them. Monument Valley's RPI is really, really high. They've only lost 1 game, and they take advantage of the fact that it's a 1.25 multiplier every time you play out of state, and their RPI is just going to be unattainable for the Rebels to get in this last weekend. But the boys, that RPI is really, really tight. And honestly, if the Rebels can go 2-0 this weekend, they give themselves a shot at being the number 1 seed this year.
And what does the Rebels need to do this weekend to maybe attain that number 1 seed this weekend? Of course, going 2-0, but what do they need to do on the floor to possibly complete that?
Well, you're going to play 2 teams that I think are going to be very motivated for this game. Wendover lost to Manila last weekend, and Wendover is a very talented group. They can put the ball in the basket. They defend pretty well. It's just they have these up and down games where, you beat Altamont by 10, but then you go on the road to Tabiona and you beat Tabiona in their own barn. It's just one of those things where, Wendover, if you're going to get a really good effort out of them coming off of a loss, and you're going to have to beat them on the road, and that's going to be a real tough matchup. And then they'll also welcome in the Manila Mustangs into Rich County on senior night, but Manila just beat Wendover, which is a team that was thought to be ahead of them. And in the RPI, Wendover and Manila right there, 5-6. So those two teams are battling to try to get themselves into a better position heading down the stretch for the state tournament.
Yeah, so two tough games, of course. It's not like Rich is playing teams that are struggling and towards the bottom of the RPI. Like, they know they're going to be playing in that first round of the state tournament. These two teams, of course, fighting for a bye, fighting for that higher seed. And what are, like, some names to look out for the Rebels this weekend and just some, stats-wise?
Well, Anthony, I'm glad you asked, because I am holding the Wendover stats right in my hand. Let's start with the girls' side. For the girls, it's Gabby Delgadillo and it's Millie Hicks. Those are two athletes for this Wendover team. They have some size to them. They have some quickness, and they also have the ability to put the ball in the hoop, as Hicks averages 12.6 points per game. Delgadillo only at 6.4, but she has very long arms, very good strength, and is very very capable of causing havoc on the offensive boards. Another player to look out is Paulina Gomez, 8.3 points per game. She is quick. This Wendover team, they might not have a lot of size in their guards, but what they do have is they have speed. They are very, very quick.
And what did Rich do to kind of counteract all that? Because, I mean, they did not lose to this Wendover team the first go-round. So what went well for them that first game?
Well, fortunately for the Rebels, when you're facing quick guards, you have to talk about Violet Taylor, who is legitimately the fastest girl in the history of 1A Utah track. And just having her being able to stay with one of their guards. The size inside, they used different combinations of Hannah Scott, Bray Pugmire, Haiti Pugmire to kind of really rotate them on Hicks and Delgadillo, so that way you're not getting the same look defensively every single time. Just because you get the same defender, you kind of know how they're going to defend you, where Bray Pugmire, I think, in my personal opinion, is a little bit quicker in her feet than Haiti Pugmire is. Haiti had a really bad knee injury, and I think that took some of her lateral quickness. Not that she isn't quick. I just think Bray's a little bit quicker. Bray's a little bit taller, so she's harder to get a shot over, where Haiti has really good hands, and she's a tough player to get the ball into the post against. She reads the play very well, and she'll jump that pass before it even gets in the post. And then Hannah Scott, I think, is kind of a hybrid between the two. She is very capable of doing either.
Yeah.
Let's move along to the Manila Mustangs on the girls' side, as this was an interesting game as well. The final score, I don't think, really tells the whole tale of this game, because Rebels were down 9-0 early on, and Cameron Slaw came out, drained 3 threes in the first 2 minutes of the game. Rebels did a much better job on her the rest of the way, only scored one more three-pointer after that, and that's going to be the key for me is Sadie Davis and Cameron Slaw. You can't let Slaw get loose from the three-point line again, and for Davis, you got to box her out. She's really long, really athletic, and she can cause havoc under the hoop.
And when you mention of taking out that main name last week, it's going to be big once again for Rich to do that, as if you can take one of their top players, one of their main scoring options out of the game and just hold them to, below their average. I've named it a couple of times in the Mountain View versus Rollins win. Mountain View held Jose Morales, who averages 15.5 per game, to 3 points. Mm-hmm. So if you can take one of those main options, especially when they shoot well from beyond the arc, it is so big for the Rebels.
Quickly, one last thing for the Rebels boys. It's going to be very similar, I think, in matchup defensive-wise, as you're going to go against two really good bigs in Du Bois and Browning for Manila. And then you're also going to have guards that can really put the ball in the hoop in Muir for Manila, as well as Del Muro for the Wendover Wildcats.
Yeah, Manila is always... It's one of those games where I feel like you just throw all the stats out the window, because these two teams know each other so well. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that goes. And when can we catch those games on My Local Radio Sports?
You can catch the game on Friday at Wendover. Summit Pizza pregame show at 3:30. First game tips at 4. Boys game tips at 5:30. On Saturday, it's going to be senior night at Rich High School. 5:30 and 7 will be the tips for them.
Big game for senior night. Who are some of the seniors on the rosters for the Rebels so far this year?
For the Rebels on the girls' side, it starts with Violet Taylor and Haiti Pugmire, who I think are parts of the heart and soul of this team, but you cannot forget players like Hannah Scott, Casey Wilson. Sage Lundgren goes in every once in a while, does a fantastic job defensively, and there are quite a few seniors on the girls' side. For the boys, it starts with Carson Muirbrook, Jaden Desch, who his insertion back into the lineup is about when the Rebels took off and started becoming dominant. Then you have players like Taylor Walker, who, doesn't quite get the playing time I think he'd want, but he's a real interesting story as he is a cancer survivor. Goes and he works his tail off. And then you also have one last senior in Jaden Cornea, who doesn't score much, but he is that point guard, the quintessential point guard that is willing to move the ball. He'll attack when he needs to. Doesn't shoot it real often. Sure to put his teammates in the right position.
He's the court facilitator, as you might say, for the Rebels, and that's a huge part of a team as well, because if you don't have that main player, things could be way different for the Rebels this season.
One last thing for these two teams, it's about the ball movement. They don't necessarily go pick and roll a ton and drive it down your throat. They work the ball around. They get themselves some real good looks on both sides. Violet Taylor has been tremendous moving the ball, and then Jaden Desch has been really, really good this year at getting the ball to the open spot, and that is part of why I think both of these teams are having a ton of success. But we're going to have to take a quick break here on Home Field Advantage. I'm Aaron Poling, that's Anthony Colasuono, and Elan Olliff. When we come back, we'll hear about the Evanston Red Devils.
Life is better in the country. KNYN, Fort Bridger, Evanston, Woodruff, 99.1. The country you want to be in.
Hey there, I'm Jake Major, your local Medicare and insurance benefits advisor for the Bullock Agency of Wyoming. With over 25 years of experience protecting families in rural America, we understand the importance of having an affordable insurance coverage. Whether you're searching for extra coverage or looking to understand and switch your Medicare options, I can help you find a range of top-rated insurance companies and tailor-made packages based on your needs. Call me, Jake Major, today at 307-209-4685 and let's discuss your insurance options. We're the Bullock Agency of Wyoming when benefits matter.
If you've never heard a mechanic say they truly care, then you've been at the wrong place. Stacy's Repair in Woodruff is a family-owned and operated business open since 1992. Offering all types of maintenance and repair services, you can be sure your vehicle is operating at its best. Whether your vehicle is older or the newest model, gas or diesel, we fix and maintain them all. Also offering chip repair, windshield replacement, and tires. When your vehicle needs a mechanic, bring it to the ones who truly care. Stacy's Repair in Woodruff.
Founded in 1938 with the hopes and dreams of serving the Bridger Valley, Benedict's Trading Company was started. Now 85 years and 3 generations later, Benedict's Market is still serving the Bridger Valley by offering the highest quality meats and fresh produce to having fresh baked items and hot deli options. Benedict's Market is your one stop for all of your grocery needs. Benedict's Market offers the best services in a modern setting to make your shopping both quick and easy. Visit them today at 950 North Highway 414, Mountain View, Wyoming.
And we welcome you back to Home Field Advantage, our weekend preview. Here brought to you by Jake Major with the Bullock Agency of Wyoming and Bear Lake Memorial Hospital. Also, big thank you to First Bank of Wyoming and Les Schwab Plains Tire for sponsoring our broadcast studio today. Well, we now talk about the Evanston Red Devils, guys. I'm Elan Olliff. That's Aaron Poling, joined by Anthony Colasuono as well. And the Red Devils, let's start off with the girls. Last time they were out, they played Riverton. And it was a pretty close game, 49-35 in favor of the Wolverines. The night before, though, they played a team that is ranked number 2 in the Wild Preps Coaches and Media poll. And I think that is, I'm just going to say it, I think that is incorrect. The Cody Phillies are definitely the favorite to win the state title as they beat the Red Devils 66-35, your final score on that one.
Tough days, but I mean, for the girls Red Devils team, it's about progress. Yeah. At this point in the season, you just want to keep getting better, build towards next year. And as a senior, you don't want to hear that because you want to be good now. It's your last year, but for the program, it's just about getting better. There's a lot of youth on this team still, getting them some good minutes so that way they can roll into next year, hopefully feeling a bit better about themselves, and then also give themselves an opportunity for next season.
And also the 4A West is just super competitive in basketball on both sides, especially for the girls with Cody going undefeated last year, only 1 loss on the year this year up to this point. So it's definitely these learning experiences. And people might get frustrated and be like, oh, but these girls are freshmen, sophomores, juniors who are seeing their first year of varsity time. Believe me, this team will be better and back next year, and will have more progress to develop off of. And Roy Barker, an excellent head coach, will have an amazing game plan for next year.
Well, the other thing that people, I've talked about it a lot, but the majority of this team was either playing JV. Well, really, all this team was playing either the majority of their minutes at JV, freshman, or even 8th grade basketball last year. I mean, even the two seniors, Ryan Debenham and J.C. Bardsley, because we had such a senior-heavy team last year, you remember, Aaron?
Absolutely.
They didn't get a whole lot of playtime either. So this is a brand-new team from start to bottom. It is game day for them, senior night over at Red Devil Gymnasium, as they will be taking on Rick Carroll and the Green River Wolves. Last time these two teams faced off was January 18th, and the Wolves with a 49-27 win. They were paced by Addison Demaray, who was just dominant on the inside, and Nicole Wilson, who was very effective from the charity stripe as well. In the first quarter, Evanston outscored by Green River 14-3, but then they start a bit of a comeback in the second quarter, scoring 5, giving up 6, making it 20-8 at the half. And then Evanston outscores Green River 16-13 in the third quarter, giving yourself a little bit of something to build off of, but then get shut out 11-1 in the fourth quarter.
And based on those scores, Rory Barker is trying to kind of get that full game together, a close game versus Green River. And that third quarter, outscoring them 16-13. That's amazing, to put 16 points up in a quarter. And of course, you see them once, now you're seeing them again. You know them better now. You know your opponent. That's what the special thing is about quadrant plays. You could see your opponent for a second time and build a better game plan.
Well, the one thing that I kind of took away coming from this game was thinking, man, you get a few more points in that first quarter, and you continue the momentum you built in the third quarter into the fourth. This is a completely different game, and I'm very excited for this matchup. I was very excited for this matchup leaving Green River. I still am. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's amazing what the inspiration of senior night can also do, as these players are going to come out. They're going to play inspired. I mean, if you're on that team, I'm sure they love the seniors on the team, and I'm sure they're going to want to win one on the way out for those seniors. So I like the inspiration that senior night has. Obviously, that's not really a real empirical thing that we can put on the basketball court. It's more, spiritual and into the fight.
Tangible.
Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think J.C. Bardsley is going to have a big game. I think Ryan Debenham is going to be very productive because it is their senior night. After that tonight, of course, that game gets started at 6 o'clock with our pregame show at 5:30 live from Red Devil Gymnasium. They'll take a day off. Then they'll go to Star Valley on a Saturday afternoon. Pregame at 12:30. The girls' game starts at 1 o'clock. And last time these two teams played was January 25th. Kinley Englehart, 17 points for the Star Valley Braves as the Braves beat the Red Devils. Final score 54-17, and really, Kinley Englehart is the issue that Evanston is going to have to try to solve on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, Star Valley wouldn't be a Star Valley game without mentioning Englehart, as kind of feels like in all of the girls' sports, volleyball, basketball, and soccer as well. She is a key piece for that team, and 17 points, the way I think they should look at this is let's try to get better. Let's try to make this a different game. Let's try to make this a game for longer. Let's see if we can keep this close heading into half, and then see if we can just give ourselves an opportunity. That's really all you can ask for, is give yourself a chance on the road against a pretty good Star Valley team.
Well, and the other thing is that it doesn't feel like really very many people outside of Evanston are giving them much of a shot in this game.
Not at all.
So there'd be nothing more fun than to go into Star Valley and turn some heads for this team. That is for sure.
That would be a key win of the season if they could go into Star Valley and the Lady Devils pull off a win. And speaking of Englehart, if you can hold her to 9 or 10 points, less than that, you have yourself a game on your hands. So, like what Aaron said, try to make this game longer. Try to be there at halftime. And then if you're there at half, it makes the second half much more serious, but also it puts you in that mindset of, hey, let's go get that win.
Yeah. Moving on to the boys, they'll take on Green River tonight. Over the weekend, the boys took on Cody and Riverton. Cody right now looks like the number 4 seed out of the Northwest. Evanston loses that one 44-37. The next day, it doesn't get any easier as they take on the top team out of the Northwest right now, Riverton, but come away with a 52-41 win. And that weekend right there kind of just is an example of what I feel like we've been talking about all year, how competitive and how much parity there is in the 4A West for the boys this year.
And that's just a huge win over Riverton as well. They have Parker Paxton, who amazing basketball player, even more of an amazing golfer, committed to University of Colorado.
He hit a half court at the buzzer in the first half.
Unlimited range.
Yeah.
That kid has unlimited range. And also breaking a 3-game winless streak as well and taking that momentum into senior night versus Green River. Just a lot of implications for conference play, but also the players tonight on the floor, the Red Devils, they're going to remember that win over Riverton. And they're going to be like, hey, let's do that again against Green River here tonight, senior night on our own floor.
It was the first time they beat Riverton in 4 attempts.
Wow.
So it was a big win, and it was something I think that was something Coach Watsawa had been working up to and kind of an example of how far this team has come. For tonight, though, the Red Devils will take on Green River. Last time they played Green River, they beat them 75-51, outscoring Green River 16-14 in the first quarter, 19-19 in the second quarter, and then exploding in the second half, 18-13 in the third, 20-14 in the fourth. And the Red Devils paced by Riker Lind, who hit 5 beyond the arc shots in that game.
Yeah, and this is another case of they're going to play inspired as well tonight. But you also have to remember the Wolves, as the away team on a senior night, there's nothing like going into someone's gymnasium and just ruining senior night by winning the game. So this isn't going to be –
No.
It could still very well be a 20-point game, but I think they're going to get a feisty Wolves team tonight that really wants to play spoiler here. And I think the Red Devils, I think they're going to be prepared for it, and I think they're going to be ready to roll, and it should be a fun night.
All eyes are going to be on Theron Archibald. He's the lead scorer in the West right now. I think he's a legit if they can get some wins together, I think he's on a player of the year type talent. It was because of his big game that Star Valley had to go to overtime to beat Green River the first time they played. So all eyes are going to be on Theron Archibald, number 20 for Green River. And, I mean, Riker Land, again, he hit 21 points with 5 from beyond the arc. Evanston, with one of the best shooting nights they've had all year, hitting 9 3-point shots as a team.
Yeah, back to Archibald, you can just look back to last year in one of the last regular season games for the Evanston Red Devils. They were up 15 in Green River, and then Archibald in the final 2 minutes shot them back into it being a more manageable game for the Wolves. The score looked a lot better. So the Red Devils know exactly what Archibald can do.
Yeah, and if they win this game tonight, it makes Saturday very, very interesting because you're pretty much playing for the number 1 seed at that point. Because Star Valley has not dropped a quadrant game. Evanston has only dropped 1 quadrant game, and it was to Star Valley. Final score 68-55 on January 25th, 2024. Star Valley outscoring Evanston 14-9, and then they each get 16 points in the second quarter, making it 30-15 going into the half. But a 14-9 start, and then a 22-12 third quarter, capped off by 4 3-pointers just in that quarter alone. That was 4 of the 11 3-pointers that Star Valley hit. Evanston can play with this Star Valley team. They can steal a win on the road, and if they do, then that makes that Jackson game very, very interesting to see what's going to happen, because if Evanston can get a tie with Star Valley, the tiebreaker goes to quadrant record. Evanston's quadrant record on the other side of the quadrant, I don't think is as good as Star Valley, so I think you're playing for number 2. The only way you can get number 1 is you've got to win. You've got to win out, and you need to have Star Valley suffer a loss to either Jackson or Green River in the next 2 games.
Oh, you can only control what you can control, so you got to take care of business.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a fascinating game. I think this regional tournament, when we talk about it in 2 weeks, is going to be fascinating. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen. I think it's very possible you see a 4 seed take down a number 1 seed in the first round. It's just unreal the parity we have in the 4A West this year.
And I love that chaos as well.
Oh, yeah.
A 4 seed almost taking down a 1 seed. That's
I am thinking I will get there, whether how early Evanston's playing or not, get there for game 1 and just
scout. Just
plant it.
Yeah.
And just sit and watch all the games, because I think it's going to be absolute madness what is going to happen in Green River.
I think I'm
going to
do that.
Weeks.
Same in Thermopolis as well.
Yeah.
But, on both sides, just absolute insanity basketball-wise. We love it. And also, going back, if Evanston can get that win over Star Valley, that'll be huge.
It just throws it in even more chaos.
And I love chaos in basketball. That's why I want this win to happen. But at the same point in time, going just kind of trailing back to that home game against Star Valley in that third quarter, that the lid was just on the rim for Evanston.
That's right. You were there,
Yes.
so you kind of know that Evanston they had a really great shooting night against Green River.
Yes.
And it was the exact opposite against Star Valley. Yet they were still in that game. They brought that thing down to a 10-point lead. They were down by 15, brought it down to a 10-point lead, and just couldn't get over that 10-point mark. We got only about 4 or 5 minutes left, and we need to talk about Lyman. But Evanston basketball tonight against Green River, pregame brought to you by Kazine's Ace and Furniture at 5:30. Girls at 6, boys at 7:30. Then on Saturday, pregame brought to you by Kazine's Ace and Furniture live from Star Valley at 12:30. Girls start at 1 o'clock, boys at 3:30 p.m.
Yeah, we'll hop into Lyman now. And, of course, a win on senior night on Monday versus Rollins in the previous week. Both the girls and the boys suffered tough losses at Pinedale, but Pinedale is a tough road environment to go into. And on the girls' side, Elan Bowers finished off with 20 points again. That's the per quota for her per game, an amazing player, as Owen McMillan for Pinedale on the boys' side had 24. And the main scores for Lyman this year in that game versus Pinedale, it was Caleb Smith with 11 points in their double-double in the season. But going to senior night, 53-37 win for the girls and a 51-48 win for the boys. And just huge momentum. Talking to head coach Barry Hill, this win has implemented those sophomores. This is a young team. Only Carter Bradshaw and Caleb Smith are the two seniors on the boys roster, as the girls have Ashton Wells, Briley Bradshaw, and Addie Nelson, who's the team manager for them as well, and a couple other names as well for the girls' side. But going back, Barry Hill said this game made our sophomores and freshmen kind of think in these varsity moments, as this is some of the first moments they're getting on the season varsity-wise. And now they walk in this week versus Level and Powell, two great matchups. And I think both the boys and girls teams, they're going to be focused, straight on, and ready to attack Level and Powell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, of course, looking at these Powell and Level this season, on the boys' side for Level, it's Owen Walker averaging 13.5 points per game, a huge force down low for Level. He had a triple-double versus Mountain View at the Bridger Valley Invitational. And for Powell, it's going to be Gunnar Erickson at 14.2 and Brock Johnson at 13.4. And the broadcast schedule this week for both teams, I'll be at Level Friday night for Mountain View versus Level. Girls tip off at 5:30, boys at 7. Big Country Properties pregame show at 5 p.m. And then Saturday, I will be for there at Lyman and Level. Girls tip off at 10:30, boys at 12 at noon, and then pregame at 10 a.m. That's the wrap up for the Bridger Valley here.
And that is going to do it for our Homefield Advantage weekend preview. A big thank you to Jake Major with the Bullock Agency of Wyoming for When Benefits Matter, as well as Bear Lake Memorial Hospital for sponsoring our show today. Tune in to all those games that we talked about. It's going to be a fun weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday for Homefield Advantage right here at 10:30 a.m. on K9, live on mylocalradio.com, and, of course, the re-air on KQ at 4 p.m. Thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you at the games.